So we just heard a lot from Michael Cohen's lawyer, Danya Perry, in her first interview since this trial began. And here to break it all down is former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner, and Christy Greenberg, who is the former deputy chief of the criminal division in the Southern District of New York. And she was at the courthouse today. So, Christy, let me start with you. We just heard Danya Perry's take on her client's testimony over the last few days. What did you think? And anything she missed there in terms of good and bad moments?
Well, look, as Danya said, her client has baggage. He has enough baggage to fill JFK Airport. That said, I thought he did remarkably well. I think people were really concerned about his demeanor and how he would conduct himself on the stand. He was composed at all times. He was respectful. He never got rattled, and he was generally consistent, whether he was answering questions on direct or answering them on cross. I felt like he really owned the moments that he needed to own about prior pleas and prior conduct. And look, I thought on the whole, he was a real juxtaposition to, as you mentioned briefly, what we saw later today, which was Robert Costello take the stand and really just have a ton of antics. So that made Cohen seem all the more, steady, I think, in the eyes of this jury. He provided important testimony. He was corroborated in many respects, and his story generally makes sense and really fits with what the other witnesses have said and what the documents show. So I think overall it was a great job from the prosecutors.
We're going to come back to that moment because I know you were in the courtroom for it. But I do want to ask Glenn the question I asked Danya, and I understand why she didn't want to answer, which is just, if you're in this courtroom and you're the jury, I mean, how much of this is about Cohen's credibility? That seems to be a core part of the defense's strategy, is pulling it apart, which we all anticipated in advance of the trial.
Yeah, Michael Cohen is an essential witness. There's no two ways about it. And by all accounts, he, withstood something like 20 or 25 hours of cross-examination. And the reporting is that he never lost his cool.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought, I know you're going to talk about Bob Costello in a minute, but who would have thought another lawyer witness would all of a sudden make Michael Cohen look like the model of thoughtfulness and circumspection and decorum? And yet now the story has become Bob Costello, who, let's face it, is aligned with Trump and who the jurors will associate with Donald Trump. He played the fool in a way I've never seen a lawyer play. I've seen defendants do that on the stand. I've never seen a lawyer behave that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important point. Michael Cohen is not a quiet wallflower. Like, we've all met him and spent time with him, so his demeanor is interesting. All right, Christy, so you were in the room for the exchange, I believe, between Judge Merchan and Robert Costello at the end of the day today. It was dramatic to read. I mean, he cleared the courtroom. There was a lot of language I would use with my children. The big question to me is, was this all really worth it for the defense? I mean, they were trying to get him to discredit Cohen. So at the end of the day, was it worth it in your view?
No, it was incredibly stupid, because any concerns that these jurors may have had about Michael Cohen's credibility, I think, got lost and overshadowed by just how unprofessional and uncivil Bob Costello was to the judge. Juries tend to like the judge in this case, and Judge Merchan is, again, very civil, very respectful of their time. He has a very gentle way in speaking with this jury. I would expect that they like him quite a bit. And for this, for not only a lawyer who, as Glenn said, I agree, I haven't seen a lawyer behave like this on the stand, but to put a finer point on it, this is not just any lawyer. He actually was also the former deputy chief of the criminal division of the Southern District of New York, which was my old job and Danya's old job. So this is somebody who really should know better. And to see him act with such disrespect to the judge, rolling his eyes, saying ridiculous, absurd. At one point, he was trying to strike his own answers to questions when he was talking over the judge. It was just, it was a lot. And I'm sure the jury really picked up on it and really didn't like it. Now this is what they're thinking about. No, they're not thinking about Michael Cohen anymore. They're thinking about this guy who, as Glenn said, they're going to associate with the defense. The defense chose to call him, and now he is their witness, and they have to deal with the consequences of that.
It's a certain irony that he discredited himself in his effort to discredit Michael Cohen. There's a lot packed in there. So let me ask you, I mean, there was, according to accounts of a number of people in the room, Todd Blanche was a little meandering. It kind of was all over the place. Now, the way that our colleague Rachel Maddow described it is like in the Great British Bake Off, where maybe you don't know all the ingredients and it's like all leading up to the closing statement, which means basically he needs to get these things in the record. But explain to me the strategy about being a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, so when I read Blanche's, the accounts of Blanche's cross-examination, what came to mind for me, now I was a career prosecutor. Prosecutors don't typically make particularly good criminal defense attorneys. Prosecutors deal in what is and what was. Criminal defense attorneys deal in what could have been, what might have been, what should have been. Let's engage in a little misdirection. And he came across as sort of a frustrated prosecutor. He didn't have a feel for cross-examination. I mean, cross-examination is generally about get in, make your 3 best points, and get out. When you go on cross-examining somebody for hours and hours and days, you've probably lost, particularly if the witness is performing well and the jury senses the frustration of the defense attorney, they're going to start siding with the witness. So I don't think he performed particularly well, and I think that's because he doesn't have a lot of experience as a criminal defense attorney.
Such an interesting thing. It was like apparently people shifting in their seats and things. I could talk to you guys for a lot longer, but we have to go to a break. So Christy Greenberg and Glenn Kirshner, thank you so much both for joining me this evening. I really appreciate it.